Wheel of Genre, the show for readers who love the flub. Right now, we are reading every short story in Harlan Ellison's anthology, Dangerous Visions. That's right, we will not stop for anything or anyone. And right now, we are reading Carol Emshwiller's Sex and/or Mr. Harrison. I'm Zach. This week, I am super interested in the voice of this short story. It feels like the voice is everywhere. It's overflowing from the page. And I feel like we cannot really talk about this story without spending most of our time talking about that voice.
It's practically screaming. I'm Bob. I'm interested in perversion in this story. I think it's a perverted story, a perverted narrator, and I think the voice is perverted. What a strange story. It's probably not science fiction, but let's talk about it. This woman, she lives in
Harlan Ellison says it's functionally science fiction. So
what? What on earth does that mean?
What does it mean indeed? Go on.
So this functionally science fiction story, she lives in an apartment and there is a man that lives in her apartment that she's pretty much obsessed with. She's always talking about him. She sets her watch by him, and she is obsessed, and I apologize to listeners. This is quite not nice, the way that she talks about him, but she is obsessed with about how fat he is. And to the point of, like, she imagines him putting on his pants. She listens into the house because, as she describes him, he's so fat that you can hear the floor creak, the walls creak. So it does make you feel a little uncomfortable reading it. You're like, oh, this is a little rude, but she's still, it seems to be almost love, or it's just perversion. But anyway, she makes this plan, and she's been thinking about this for some time. She is a very small person, very svelte, also just really short. And she decides she's going to sneak into his room while he's gone, wait there all day, and chew on fig Newtons like an absolute weirdo if sneaking in was not weird enough, sit on his shoes in his closet, and then wait for him to come home. And then she just wants to watch him or confront him. She does. She sees something which I cannot tell if it's just the voice describing it or if it really is a science fiction slant or science fiction turn. And then she runs. That's the end of the story.
Yeah.
Yes. Strange. Avant-garde.
That's what I would say. So she's motivated by a question. She wants to answer this question. And it's, quote, the question is, parentheses, and perhaps it is the question for today, parentheses, hyphen, who is he really? One of the normals with a capital N or one of the others with a capital O? So she has it in her mind. This isn't really fleshed out, but what I can really pull together is that she seems to think that most of the people in the world are normal. And I think that means they're either male or female. But then there are others, and I can't tell if the others are a neither situation or if they're simply a not human situation. But she seems to think that they exist. And she's never seen them, but she's going to go find them. And she thinks Mr. Morrison might be one of them. So I think that's really what motivates her to go up, this kind of like body curiosity. But interestingly, when she gets up there, she seems to fall in love. Like there's this element of like once she sees him in his natural element, he's undressing, he's eating, he's doing all this stuff, he's looking out the window, she starts to fall in love. And that's when she kind of, realizing that she's falling in love with him, makes her crawl away. She describes herself as like a gecko, crawling on the floor away from where she can see him to be somewhere else. Of course, he sees her. There's this moment of staring at each other, and she runs away. She runs down the stairs back to her room. But the interesting thing is she crawls in there and she waits. And it says specifically that she left the door unlocked. And I think that there's this kind of like expectation / desire that he will follow her down. I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
No, you're right. The final word, I think, is "Why aren't you coming?" or "Why aren't you here?" Something like that, because she's waiting, waiting, waiting. She expects. What does it say? It says, "Why doesn't he come?" That's the final sentence. And yes, Carol, when she writes about the story, she says she went to go see. Oh, sorry. So she says the character says this, but then later Carol, the writer, says, "Yes, this is a real thing that happened in my life. Not the weird stalking. Maybe that's real, but she went to go see a ballet." And everyone had these skin suits on. So everyone is in the ballet naked, but not really naked because they're wearing skin suits. And she said that disturbed her so much that she started to realize, what is this other, this sexless thing? But if that is the obsession, I guess if it's thinking about other different kinds of sexes or other different kind of bodies, looking at different bodies, it does feel kind of like what Le Guin looks at, in Left Hand Darkness, or I guess what she is kind of interested in. But I'm also, as you said, the voice is very strange. When she writes the paragraph of first confronting him, she first says that his belly button is God. That's probably a metaphor. But she's describing this weird sunset on his belly button, and it's the eye of God following her. And so then she goes on and she says, he's above there looking at me, staring at me. I'm the gecko. I'm running away. And then she says that this must be a kind of naked suit. And whatever the sex organs may be, they are hidden behind this hot, pocked, and pitted imitation skin. So, yes, it's kind of like someone, like almost a body snatcher scenario, someone in a fake suit, maybe someone who is an alien, or is it just a weird idea coming across through the voice?
I think it's just a weird idea coming across through the voice. The author doesn't seem to be particularly concerned with giving facts and giving details straight to us. Everything is always kind of slanted, or maybe even I would say filtered or reprocessed through that protagonist voice. Actually, have you ever read that one book? It's called On Bullshit by, who is that person? Harry Frankfurt, On Bullshit.
No.
Oh, okay. A short essay. You see it at Barnes & Noble all the time, but basically the idea is that it's like a philosophy essay where he tries to give a definition of the word bullshit. And he says the definition of bullshit is not true or false. It's not part of the true or false dichotomy. Like, you could have true bullshit, you could have false bullshit, but the essence of bullshit is being indifferent to truth. Like, bullshit is something that's said, but it doesn't really have to be true. It says more about the person speaking it, perhaps, or the people being spoken to, than it does about its object. So I was thinking about this definition. Wow, this sounds really mean, but I mean it in a kind way, or at least like trying to use this definition about bullshit.
It sounds like bullshit, Zach.
Yeah, like bullshit is a style. So like, here's a quote from this story. I wait downstairs, sometimes looking up and sometimes holding my alarm clock. I smile a smile I hope is not as wistful as his. Mr. Morrison's moon face has something of the Mona Lisa to it. Certainly, he must have secrets. So, like, okay, so what's going on there? The protagonist has compared this person's face to the Mona Lisa. Okay. It has a moon face. It compares it to the Mona Lisa. Certainly, he must have secrets. So it's like, it's not that he has secrets. It's that certainly, like a modifier word, he must have secrets. We don't really learn anything about him other than the idea that this person thinks he looks like the moon, thinks he looks like Mona Lisa, thinks he probably has secrets. Like, there's no attempt here to tell us anything true about this world. There's only the attempt to kind of tell us about this character's interior worldview, if that makes sense.
So very, again, kind of avant-garde. Maybe that's what she's going for, just going for the voice, describing a person's strange, weird worldview. It reminds me a little bit of, even though I think that's in third person, Tiger Tiger or Stars My Destination, Gully Foyle, when he really starts to lose it, things get really strange, almost synesthetic. But I don't hate the voice of this. It is strange, and maybe it's all bullshit, but it's kind of fun in a way. Because of the weird obsessiveness of it. I would potentially want to read more of Carol. And I think it's interesting because Ursula K. Le Guin says that she is a major fabulist, this is quote, major fabulist, a marvelous magical realist, one of the strongest, most complex, most consistently feminist voices in fiction. I wonder if she is really putting all of these fabulous things together. Is she, through creating these weird similes, these weird comparisons, is it really doing something for that science fiction community? Because she seemed more attached to that than a literary community. So again, if some of these dangerous visions are like bringing the influence of James Joyce, like the Philip Jose Farmer, the story we didn't like very much, but was that necessary to bring that energy into science fiction to get a new wave going? Is it necessary to bring this kind of Virginia Woolf style to get this going? I am interested, though, in, I guess, Harlan Ellison wanting to include this story. I watched a video by David Wiley on YouTube, and he says that he also read Dangerous Visions, and he said, I didn't like a lot of these, but I understand how important it is, and what would New Wave be, and what would science fiction be. It's more about the impact, and it's really important on the impact is the most important thing, not necessarily the stories on the inside. And he also mentions, like, he feels that many of the authors in this are just Harlan Ellison's buddies. And I feel like maybe this is a buddy case because it doesn't feel like sci-fi at all. But what do you think of the merit of, again, we saw Philip Jose Farmer bringing in the Joycean style. Now we see Emshwiller bringing in this kind of Virginia Woolf style. Do you think we will see an impact of that style on later science fiction? Have you seen any more avant-garde science fiction since?
It's a really good question. Avant-garde science fiction since this. I don't know why, but the one story that comes to mind is like Annihilation by
Vandermeer, yeah.
Vandermeer, yeah. But not only in the kind of like weirdness of it, but in the descriptiveness of it, but also the like utter confusion about what's going on, what's really going on.
Yes.
But I think honestly for me, what this reminds me of more than any influence in science fiction is like Japanese literature, like convenience store women, for example, or what's another good example?
The Woman in the Dunes reminds me.
Yeah. Kobo Abe. Yeah. Just like the weird, sparse texts where the events that are happening are so strange and disconnected and dreamlike that you have to ask yourself, is what I think I'm reading actually what's going on? And I think that, I'm not saying that this story actually made its way to Japan and influenced their literature, but I do think that there's a lot of kind of aesthetic qualities, like overlap that it has going on for it in a good way.
Yeah, I think those stories were coming out before this because, again, isn't Dangerous Visions 65 or is it in the 70s? I can't remember. But I think Woman in the Dunes comes out before that.
Yeah.
It also reminds me,
Convenience Store Women is in the past 20 years. So it's like this is a long-standing Japanese tradition that this author
yes. I'm saying the Japanese tradition is much older. Yes, for sure. I don't think this...
Yeah.
Yes. This did not inspire Japanese fiction. It reminds me, though, there's this scene in The Sailor Who Fell with Grace to the Sea. At the very beginning, the narrator is watching his mother through a little treasure chest, and he's poked a little hole through it, and he watches this sexual scene. It reminds me the interiority, although that is also, I believe, third person, but the obsession of one person's obsession is kind of similar to one person's obsession here, where it is kind of perverted, and you're kind of going along this weird, long, drawn-out voyeurism. But I guess what I want to ask is, no, I have no idea what I want to ask. I'm just going to try and sound.
Well, I got a question for you.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Okay, I know. Okay.
How do you feel about the voyeurism? Like, what is the tone of this story? Because it's not clear to me always that it's a tone of admiration. Sometimes I feel like this person just exists as an object to be disgusted at. But I want to know if you had a different experience of this story.
That's what it kind of feels like, is an object to be disgusted at. But she also talks about how much she loves everything that she's disgusted at. And she describes like all of these strange shapes and pieces of his body. And she says, but I love what it's all natural. And what is natural is to be beloved or to be loved, something like that. But I don't really buy it. I don't know. It does feel like she's being really mean, not necessarily loving. Maybe the character tells us that she's loving, but it doesn't really feel like it. And the idea of, I don't know, the character's kind of repulsion at the skin suits in the ballet is kind of weird to me. I'm not really sure why, but she seems really disgusted by the idea of there being more than two sexes. And she's not even willing to consider it. She's like, ooh. So that kind of, I didn't appreciate her opinion on that. But it's not clear, so I can't really say for sure. But it makes me think, Harlan Ellison says it in the introduction, and then I was listening to an interview that she did, I think maybe 10 years ago with a radio guy on the Bat Segundo show. And he asked her, Harlan says, you just like to write for yourself. And he does say that in the introduction. Do you think that's true? Are you only writing for yourself? She says, no, I was trying to publish these stories in science fiction collections and science fiction magazines, but I guess I really am only trying to write for myself. And it does make me wonder, when you have a character who is just an obsession and is just going to narrate one kind of almost not stream of consciousness, but kind of, because I'm just telling you exactly what I see for a very long time, and I'm telling you why I think that, and nothing really happens. Does it feel like a waste of the reader's time? Does it feel, not just is it a bad story, but is it kind of offensive in that writer-reader relationship? I'm just going to write a bunch of stuff and make you read it, and you should appreciate it. Does it feel offensive, or does it feel like it just kind of missed the mark, so we can give her a pass?
You have to wonder if this person's what message this person is trying to communicate. Some of these stories, the person is trying to communicate an intellectual message through their stories. This one is clearly much more in line with an aesthetic message in the story. However, it feels like the author is gesturing towards there being an intellectual message behind this story. But for the life of me, I can't find it. But what I can find is a very clear, aesthetic message, or maybe a message is the wrong word, vision. Just like the way the world looks is clearly rendered, warts and all, or as she puts it, dingles, dangles, wrinkles, ruts, bumps, and humps, and all. And so yeah, I don't know how to measure that, success in terms of this. I think almost anyone would probably prefer that their stories have both heavy aesthetic and heavy message. I'm trying to think of what a good example of this might be. Maybe Dune, though it feels unfair to compare this to Dune. But why didn't she write Dune? But but that's probably a story that has both of those dialed up to 10, whereas this feels maybe like a 10 and a 2, if that makes sense. But maybe I'm being unfair. I don't know. Maybe I'm being unfair.
No, I think you're fair in this story. I would really like to read more of her work. I think it is kind of interesting. It's very different, especially if she is all about science fiction. I'd like to read the stuff that is actual science fiction. I think in 2011, she had someone picked up all of her collected stories and published it. I think that'd be kind of interesting to see. And her life sounds really nice. She and her husband, he was an avant-garde he made films, and they made lots of films together. They were pretty nice parents, it sounds like. And I thought this was really cute. This is a fact, because her A Wikipedia fact, Zach. I've really gone and done my work here. She's married to Ed Emshwiller, and apparently she regularly served as his model for paintings of beautiful women. So they have a nice relationship. That's always nice to hear. But no, this story's terrible. But I'd love to read her other stories.
I don't think it's terrible. I really don't. I just think it gives me a little bit of the
Maybe
ick.
it's not terrible. Yeah.
Intentionally or not. I don't know. Let's find that collected edition and let's put this on our to-do, or not our to-do list, our to-read list, because I think there's more to explore with this author, for sure.
Yes, Zach, we've picked Madarin, possibly the weirdest collection of short fiction to ever be written, and then perverted fiction. These are our two choices so far from Dangerous Visions.
Yeah, what can I say?
Sally ho. Tally ho.
Yeah. All right. Talk to you later.
I'm going to drink more cough syrup so I can go to bed. Talk to you later, Zach.